Hey guys, this is Brian Birds
Nick Haggerty.
and we are here for another episode of we haven't determined a new name, but we're gonna probably play this around tea with Andrew because Andrew was actually supposed to be out of town, but he's not.
But he's not. So we're going to have coffee with Nick, and Brian Birds is enjoying a room temperature mucho
Mucho mango.
mango, which
So
I understand is lovely, but would be better cold.
would be better cold. All right, so guys, what is the conversation today? I think that we were kind of fly by night, so we're gonna kind of take.
Well, actually, what I was going to talk about was my takeaways from the 100K that I did last weekend. A lot of people last night at the Tree Pack. I might pick up with some takeaways.
All right, so my conversation is very simple. That process of we are into the year, we're having conversations, and to use the tree pack conversation is that people tend to be so focused on what they're doing, which is a great thing, but it also can lend to a little bit of a headache, right? So if you're so focused on your lane and you forget the opportunities. So I'm going to go back to Tuesday and conversate about the fact that I had a team meeting that happened on Tuesday. And in this team meeting, there was a conversation about how do more offers get accepted in today's market. My biggest suggestion is obviously make sure your contracts are clean. There's lots of stories and trainings that you can take today about getting your offer accepted. But what is not being talked about is the relationship of realtors and the relationship that can be bound by the point of having
You're talking realtor to realtor relationship.
realtor. And I brought this up to my team, and they were a little bit aghast and a little bit taken aback by the fact of how much relevance I gave to it. And the fact that even those agents that might be really difficult to deal with, sometimes we need to learn how to deal with them the appropriate way, right? And I'll use a Myers-Briggs conversation, right? Have you ever, I've had you take the Myers-Briggs test a couple times, right? This is the disc profile. It's been around forever. And the conversation is that everybody has a style in which they can communicate. Nick calls this verbal judo, right?
Verbal judo.
And that's it, right? Knowing your
Sounds
opponent,
cool.
right? If you go up against one opponent, you'll go in one style. Whereas if you go up against another opponent, you'll go in a different style. Is that true?
100%.
So in these relationships, Nick is much better at this than I am. But communicating with other people, like being extroverted. I'm an introvert by true nature, but I understand that by being introverted, that can affect me negatively by not having those relationships and those future relationships going on.
I would say absolutely. And again, since we're coming as realtors and you get in there and you start realizing and respecting what everybody brings to the table. But I mean, there were I don't know, quite a few people there last night that I would consider friends and respected colleagues, and every one of us is absolutely different. Learn to respect what they bring to the table. Like
or
I
at
said,
least or at least you can make a mental note of what they are in their personal lane, right? So
for sure.
if they're sticklers for the contract, if they are um not sticklers for the contract, knowing those things,
More,
yeah, knowing those things, and you missed Nick's face on that, and I apologize. I should have paid attention to that. But knowing those things is what adds value, right? So knowing that you might need to be more diligent about a contract from certain people and vice versa.
well, and knowing how they negotiate, right? Like that's what we do. We're here to take care of our clients, and some people are a lot more hardcore in their negotiations, and they got to win. And then some people are like, hey, let's all just win. Let's all be buddies. At the end of the day, let's everybody be winning. Be happy at the end of the day. But there is different things like that, but you can really come to respect it. And there's a lot of times when you do a deal with a realtor, and the and that does happen quite a bit too, and certainly when I'm in the mix. But no, I think it's great. And like I said, like last night was one of those kind of things where you start to know and respect these realtors. And in a market like now, where you've got 20, 30 offers, know we're going to be able to work together and get things done and really take care of your client's best interests, and vice versa. If you go out there and make sure that that you're showing that you do everything with honesty and integrity, then chances are you're going to be in a community like the realtors, where people remember you after you've done one deal. Nobody ever does a deal together and be like, I've never heard of that guy before or that girl before. Like, no, I know exactly who they are and what they're about. And that's one of those things. So our reputation is going to precede us in every other deal that we do, and not just with the individual, but with that office.
Well,
because there are agents out there that might give a good or bad rep in an entire office.
yeah, there's two relationships to that. So Nick hasn't done a lot of sales over the year, but he was very heavy into property management. But Nick is great about having a conversation and the basis that you are willing to get into a crowd that may make most people feel uncomfortable. Whereas me, I'm going to do a lot of deals with people, so you'll have a different perception of somebody than maybe I do. But that doesn't make it a bad perception or an indifferent perception. That just makes it a different perception. And that's the part that I want to make sure that is very clear, that going to this TreePack event, a lot of my agents were very reluctant on donating to the TreePack event. And does donating to the TreePack event, that's a whole other story. It has a lot of benefit to your bottom line,
100%.
but donating to the TreePack event allows you to go to these events. And in going to these events, now you have the function to communicate with other people, right? There's a lot of people that stayed in their bay, didn't go walk out and go talk to anybody else. Those people didn't get the full effect of what they could have.
Yeah, and I would say that the ones that were, well, number one, just being there, you're probably a cut above as a whole. There's a lot of people that weren't there that are great agents. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying if you weren't at TreePack last night. Well, first, if you weren't there, you were wrong. Just kidding. But no, but I would say that the agents that go, they're setting themselves up. They're paying for success. They pay a little more attention to that career that they've chosen, things like that. But then you get to go out and you get to talk to these other agents, and you get to learn, even if it's just getting some mannerisms that you respect about somebody else. You're like, you know what? I like the way they handle themselves. I might take a little bit of that from them. I didn't like the way they handled that. Maybe I'm going to make sure that I don't come off like that the next time I talk to somebody. But getting with people that are in the same career path that you are and being around them who are successful, there's never a downside to that. There just really is. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of going to those kind of events and making sure that you do rub shoulders. And that's the thing too. Just going doesn't do any good. Like you said, if you just sit there and hang out with the same people you hung out with that day, probably not getting out of that comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone, go talk to people. No one's going to bite your head off. And the other thing too, is a lot of people always have, or not always have, but a lot of people will look out there and
Actually, I'll bring up that same story.
oh, go ahead, bring it up, and then I'll
Yeah.
fill in.
So Nick uses this story as a conversational point to this conversation about having and building relationships. That going on an event where an expectation was already set, an expectation was there, but because of circumstance and because the lack of availability of seats on a wine tour,
Because my two partners ditched out on me. I went by myself going,
fair enough, fair enough. And I'll be perfectly honest, these events I'm not a huge fan of personally, but I know the quality and the benefit of them in the future. But to the story, Nick meets two people, and by the end of the conversation, he has great relationships with
oh, we're
a bunch of people.
BFFs. Yeah.
But that's the key. It wouldn't have ever happened had you not been put in a situation that was uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I also started off being a pouty little pansy too. But yeah, no, and it was. And I was like, oh, nobody here wants to be around, whatever the case was. All agents, and all terms. Started making me look foolish. At the end of the day, we all had a lot in common. Case in point, we're all realtors, and we had a great time. And I literally walked out of there with people who I would now call my friend. I get to see a lot of them last night. Walked around, I'm like, man, this is great. I respect those people. We go on, do deals with those things. That's why it's so important to not only show up to those things, but to go out and actually talk to other people. So at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt to show up alone to one of those events, as long as you're willing, instead of just sitting there with an angry look on your face, like I might have done on a bus or in an event or something along those lines. Get out and talk to people. Ask them some questions. Ask them what makes them successful. Ask them where they had some pitfalls in their career. There's no downside at all. And most people want to talk about themselves anyways, and they might want to ask you some questions, and you might actually be able to help them out in their career choice.
But And it goes full force. One, it helps you with contract getting accepted. That was where the original point went from.
The whole point.
But the second thing is, it also will help. We just had a realtor that came on to our brokerage that his original memory of me was me going to an open house probably 6 years ago and giving them good advice at that point. Not, like I was trying to be critics of that listing, but I gave them good advice on how to be successful with it. Now, Realtor Tour is becoming more prevalent, and that's another scenario, right? It doesn't have to be tree pack, doesn't have to be, going on the wine tour, but it can be a collaborative of everything.
Although if you get a chance to do that.
Yes, because it does get you credit. But
and wine.
Yeah, all those things together, we just have to realize that if we put those things together, if we create those relationships, those business relationships, they will pay off in dividends when you're putting a contract in with that particular person.
Oh, absolutely. And it makes the deal just go by so much smoother. I mean, that's something too. You call them up. Get this going. What do you think? Nobody's trying to think, is this guy trying to be sneaky? Is he trying to screw me over here? It's just like, hey, look, we're having a conversation. We've already had conversations before. Like, what are we doing? So it really is. And ultimately, not only is your relationship with the other realtors going to do well, but you're going to be able to take care of your clients better, which is, again, the name of the game, right? So that's what we're here for.
Cool. Well, so I kind of got mine out. Make sure you're participating in the things that are distributed to you. I am a member of the Board of Realtors. I just attended an MLS meeting earlier today. And listen, they take time out of your day. Last night, hey, I love to go home and just hang out with my kids and my wife and just chill. Listen, last night I had a great time, but if you gave me the choice, I would have probably selected going home. But I had the opportunity to do something. And today I'm much more focused on the fact of how much fun I had with it. And that's sometimes what we have to do. We have to get over our own hurdles in order to get past that. And I think a lot of us may have those hurdles. TreePack is a great resource. These events that are put on by other real estate companies are great resources. There was one a couple years ago that was put on by an organization. I don't remember which one, but it was an obstacle course, which
was fun. The coolest thing ever. We should bring that back.
Yeah, and it was a fun place for realtors to put transactions aside and become friends, right?
And compete against each other and find out who could eat the most hot dogs in one sitting and then go run a 2.5-mile course.
But that's the thing. It allowed us to have relationships that today we probably could have fun with when talking with certain realtors because of those relationships built at that one event that took half a day, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, so thankful that we all went to that. Yeah, and that's the thing. And getting that covered, because like you said, chances are, if someone like, hey, you're gonna go do this, you're gonna go hang out like you do most nights and go to home. I'm probably just gonna go home. But in this case, well, all right, I'll go. I am. I'm so thankful I went out.
I'm gonna throw it out there that Nick was truly trying to be delayed in going to last night, and I called him and I said, "Listen, get there on time." Now that was for my own purpose.
No, if we're being completely honest, I had already gotten somebody to take my spot on the golf team, and then that same person called me 5 minutes before the thing started and said, "Sorry, I can't make it." Thank you, Priscilla, for not making it. So
anyway, just make sure that you create those relationships, and there are enough avenues to do that. I'm just saying maybe take advantage of a few of them, even if they put you in an uncomfortable place. That's all I'm saying, is make sure that you're doing that, because I think the value add is tremendous. So that's my part. That's my addition. We're on a good timeline, so talk about our 100-mile.
Well, since you asked, Brian, I will. I'm just going to segue into this, getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, last week, if you recall, Nick talked about going on a absolute craziness of 100K race.
That's right. I was going to go
on
a
100K
race.
Equal
62 miles, Brian. Thank you for asking. And I know I haven't told this story around here yet. No, so what it was is it comes down to getting out of your comfort zone. I wasn't as open about it last time because if we're being honest, I didn't know if I was going to finish these. For it. I've never gone farther than I've done the Baton Death March twice, which is a marathon. I've done that. That's it. My buddies called me on that Monday and said, "Hey, why don't you come down with us? You really have no excuse. I won't bore you with it all, but I really did my best to get out of that as well." And then I ended up going, right? I had no training whatsoever. Showed up, didn't look at the map, really had no idea what I was in store for. They said, "Don't worry, we're going to have your drop bags," which I didn't even know what that meant. We'll have all your nutrition and all these things ready to go. Okay, sounds great. I'll show up.
I'm gonna just die. F1.
Okay, good.
So the fact that Nick's been talking here was he was
It's a green light, which I was like, this whole time I was going to tell him, I was like, dude, they're only seeing me, but that's fine. Okay. So there I was. I showed up with no knowledge. We went camping, hung out, slept in the tents, washed in the river like real men. And then we did the 62-mile race. We started at 8 in the morning on a Saturday and we finished at 3 in the morning on Sunday. It was 19 hours of just moving through backcountry trails and all that stuff, the Black Canyon Ultra, and it was a blast. It's one of those things where, I had no idea what I was in store for, probably for the best. And my two buddies, they've been training for ultras, so they knew what they were going for. The fact this was along the way, probably the only guy that had no idea what it was like to run an ultra. And I had a great time. But my takeaways on this is what I think was kind of neat is I'd look around and you see these people that you're like, oh, that guy's going to do great. That girl's going to do great. They look the part. And you see some other people are like, ooh, I don't even know why they're here. Then you get on that trail and every single couple of miles, they have the aid stations. And you see these guys that just look like animals just blowing up. They're like, I'm done, I'm out. And then you see these soccer moms, case in point, the three of us, there was 3 guys. And we were running and there was this soccer mom that was just running us down like Terminator 2 style. Like just looked at us and then she would catch us at every aid station and run in front of us. We had to catch her. We're like, oh my gosh, she's coming again. And that was what was motivating us to keep our pace going, was that she was just kicking our butts. But as we're going and we're all running with this soccer mom, we're seeing fit people that look like they've been doing this their whole life, just done on the sides, on aid stations, all that stuff. And really, the thing about that I think is important is that a lot of these people were very serious about this race, as well they should be, because it was a tough race. But they weren't like me where I just showed up. These guys have been training for this, all that stuff. And you could see a lot of people quitting. In fact, 3 miles to the end of the race, there were people like, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I'm not going to go any farther. 3 miles left. And I think what that is it's a mental block, kind of like we're talking about, getting out of that comfort zone. Once you've been going for so long, you're like, it's real easy to say, I'll never stop 3 miles beforehand. But there, you could see it in their faces, like, I can't, it's not going to do it. And it was mind blowing to me. To watch all these people that had really pushed that and to see that break, which was actually pretty cool. I mean, it's kind of neat. Like while as we were running, people would be changing places on how much fun it was. Like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever, to I'm done. And I don't know why anybody talked me into this.
And isn't that kind of where a lot of the schools that you've been to, right? Ranger school, you walk in with the elite of the elite, but it still breaks people. And that's what realtors can be great, but they also can have a breaking point, and finding that breaking point and making sure that you have preparation for that breaking.
That's actually a really good point. I think a quick 100K like that is almost like a condensed Ranger school, because it is pretty neat. Like Ranger school, I'll use that. Like you show up and you've got everybody that's there. They already had to pass. They're already the cream of the crop from the guys in their units, all this kind of stuff. So there's no slouches there. Everybody there's already had to prove that they're the best guys in the unit to be able to get sent to the unit. There's guys quitting on the first day. Why? Because emotionally, mentally, they're like, I can't go any farther. I can't do this anymore. But then there's a lot of guys who show up. They're killing it. They're studs on the first couple of weeks, but then they start getting tired. Then they start getting hungry, and then you start seeing who people really are, and they're like, I can't keep up with this anymore. It's a mental game. It's not physical. Everybody's already physically able to do that school, and I would say for the most part, everybody's physically able to do that ultra, but it's mental. It's a mental game. Are you willing to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation? Now, sometimes if you're injured, whatever the case is, I get that, but
and I think this goes back to last week too.
It goes to showing up to Tree Pack. Yeah. Mentally, I don't want to be in front of people. Okay. You get there and you get outside, show up and do it, and walk around and talk, and you realize it's not that bad. You can do it. That's what it comes down to.
Motivation versus discipline. Same conversation we had last week is that now in true resemblance, you talk about Ranger School, you talk about Bud's course for Navy SEALs, you talk about all these things. Mm-hmm. They take the best of the best and they put them in an environment that tests them.
Makes them extremely uncomfortable.
QN 2020 for realtors. Right?
Yeah.
It is a environment that anybody can navigate. Not everybody will be prepared to navigate, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that just making sure that you are willing to accept where you may need to work on things. Those people that walk in there that are just beasts, the reason they failed was because they weren't mentally prepared or physically prepared in the correct manner, right?
Yeah, I would argue that it's 99.9% of the time it's mental. I mean, physically, that's something that we can all take care of, but it's the mental portion. Like I said, that there's a reason why the studs and the D1, all this kind of stuff, those are the guys that that might be the ones that quit first, because the second it's no longer easy for them. If they haven't made themselves used to comfortable with being uncomfortable, that's a problem. Or they're used to winning all the time, and all of a sudden somebody else starts beating them at something. That's really tough to take. And yeah, that's what I would say. And that's one of those really cool takeaways from this race that I was able to come back with and be like, you know what, it's really cool to look at something and think, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm just not going to quit.
Me and Nick are both big fans of a gentleman that goes by the Iron Cowboy. And the guy is just a dominator when it comes to Ironman races. But he made a conversation with somebody that said, well, that's just because you're good at your genetics are good.
Yeah.
And his statement back was, my genetics are not good, but I'm just willing to push past whenever. I mean, think
and put in the time.
And put in the time. He's willing to do those things that most 99.9% of people will not do. And that's what separates him from everybody else. So when you're a realtor out there and having difficulty with putting in 20 offers, ask yourself a question. What have you done that nobody else was willing to do? What have and what have you put in energy wise to do something different than everybody else? Because I think that's what we forget about, is that, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I don't think I could ever do 100 Ironman races in 100 days.
I would have thought anybody could do that.
Yeah.
He did it. James
Exactly.
Lawrence.
And that's the part.
But the coolest thing about that is that, like I said, it's hard to do that. But you know, it's easy to do. Talk yourself out of doing it and giving yourself an out,
I just talked myself out of it.
Yep. But a lot of people could talk yourself out of anything. I'm talking about doing the Iron Turkey or the Turkey Trot, whichever one you might want to do on Thanksgiving, which is a 5K, right? Case in point, that same guy that we're talking about who did 100-mile races or not 100-mile races. It was Iron
50 and 50, and he was
50
doing
and then 100.
and he was doing
100.
he was doing 5K.
Ironman. He did 100 Ironman. Anyways, the point in 100 days. That same guy talks about when the first time he got up, his wife made him go do a 5K, a turkey trot, and he was like, he almost passed out on the couch, and his wife was making fun of him. That same guy had trouble with a 5K, and then became the guy who's like, I don't know, one of the most impressive feats a human can do, and just goes to show. So it's so easy for us, like, oh, you can't do it. That guy's just got something special or something else, or his genes are better. Or I couldn't do that, but it must be nice for him to be able to pull that off. And the same thing goes for real estate, right? And it comes down to like, hey, if I'm willing to put in 2 hours of work a week, but I'm pissed off because I'm not getting 100 deals, is it really because the other guy has something else there, or is it because he's showing up and doing, or he or she is showing up and doing?
And it sounds silly, but going to something like a TreePack event, and I know I'm bringing that up, and it sounds like I'm trying to push it, but
we're riding that high. We're riding that TreePack high right now. That's why.
In that conversation, talking to those agents, if I need to put an offer in with one of those agents, I can start a conversation that starts like, "Hey, great seeing you the other night," right? That sets up the right tone. Hey, I'm going to send you an offer because, one, they'll answer my phone call because I talked to them the other night. Two, we have a rapport.
Mm-hmm.
Rapport will get you inside the door. Listen, the truth of nature is it's not what you know. What you know gets you to the stage, but it's who you know that gets you on the stage. I think. I mean, I do.
Yes. And then what you finish this part. Yes, correct. Yeah. Rapport. Write that down.
I like how he thought about that for a second. Well, guys, we're wrapping up here. I just want to make sure that everybody kind of understands that, yeah, we rant and rave, but 99% of what we're trying to accomplish is just have you find that discipline to be successful. Would you agree?
100%.
So thank you. Any other input?
Nope.
All right. Andrew, come back and do your show. Guys, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Tune in anytime. I'm sure we'll find a way to continue. Nick likes being on social media, so he'll continue his process. Yeah. No cameras are working except for that one. So, guys, thank you. Have a great day. If you need anything, don't hesitate. Remember, we got a couple other trainings going on. We have this that comes on Wednesday. We have tomorrow, we have a training that goes on with Andrew and Kent that is a fundamentals class for those EXP agents or anybody interested in it. We have a recruitment or agent attraction meeting that we have on Fridays. And then Mondays, I kind of just put on kind of a general technology, usually based. And that's all put on Facebook and YouTube. Tune in anytime. If you're watching this, you're probably in the same place that those things come out as well. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everything.
Thanks, everybody.